Welcome, listeners. Let's talk about why our government is constantly growing larger. People ask that question all the time. Why doesn't our need for social services decrease? Politicians try to sell us on this particular notion. Well, what you need is smaller government. And to a certain extent, that's right. But our population is getting older, more mature, hopefully. And therefore, more medical and social services will be needed to sustain our particular generation. What is the political football that is being talked about here? The military budget grows, and grows. The budget to take care of a president after his term has been served also grows, and grows. So who's kidding who? It seems as if we're in a dichotomy between bigger military expenditures and bigger government, and the people are caught in between with fewer and fewer choices. Why should this be so? For a simple reason, we emphasize globalism, world markets, world financial institutions. We are so interwoven these days that even what the NASDAQ does affects the American Stock Exchange, which affects you and I on Main Street. What used to be even regional productions of food, if you grow apples in eastern Washington, you're now in competition with Brazil, Argentina, China, Japan. If you make dog food, it isn't just kennel ration in the United States who's doing it. You're trying to also compete with Chinese manufacturers. Should we have kept government along its 5 tasks that was indeed ensured and issued by the original Constitution? Yes, in general ways of operating, but then what are you willing to give up? You know, I get a kick out of people saying, well, all this public works, such as the water department, the library, it's all communistic oriented. And I said to a person one time, wait till your house burns down. And then who are you going to call? It isn't like we have neighbors next door who are equipped in the modern cities to come over with buckets of water and horse troughs and everything else and put out the fire as we once did. We do not live in an agricultural society where families live together, as was depicted on the program The Waltons in the 1970s. Our sociological structure is done an absolute flip-flop. We used to have 10% of the people living in cities. Now we have 10% on the farms and 90% in cities. So you need social structure. Government spends more because it's like a cancer. It grows to give the constituents the illusion in its local representation that they are truly being served. Let me repeat that again. Local and state and federal governments grow to give the illusion that the local citizenry is being served. So you bet we will throw you a bone your way, but however, the reason for that really oftentimes belong to corporate and special interests. And as long as that is the focal point of our government, it will never change. 89% to 92% of the same financiers, says Ralph Nader, who finance the Republican Party, finance the Democratic Party. Government will continue to grow the more America fights overseas wars that do not directly impact the citizens of the United States or her allies. Did you hear it? The question is, how will it grow? Why aren't we building freeways, better schools, better roads, better social structures to support the family? What we do behind the scenes, there's a redesign program for special needs children in the state of Idaho. The parents said, well, we want more directives and more authority in the programs that go to ADHD, autistic, Down syndrome, and other special needs children. What happened was Governor Butch Otter signed a redesign order for the social services to be not all state agencies, but would be under state control in the private sector, meaning nonprofit agencies. The deception here was, now instead of one government agency to answer to, you now have 6 to 8 agencies to answer to. So you have more paperwork, more bureaucracy, and you have more breakdown in the system because you have more fingers in the pot. You have more administrative cost because you have faculty and staff to support in all of the particular agencies that are overseen by health and welfare, by the state's university system, by Goodwill, and also by the counseling centers themselves. Now, how is that making bureaucracy smaller? It's merely directing it to government agencies that have not shrunk and to other nonprofit agencies to do the servicing. That means there's less dollars that are appointed to the client that are actually being utilized by the citizens of this beloved state. Now, this is just one out of thousands examples that we could talk about the deception that the political pundits try to argue. I'm going to shrink the size of government. I am going to return the citizens of the United States to have free choice. Well, if they wanted to do that, then what they would surely do is have campaign finance reform where no special interest and no corporate money would be responsible for electing the candidates who are to be the representatives of the population and the citizenry of the Republic of the United States of America. But that is not what happens. So once again, the things the states used to do for the people are given to Easter seals. They're given to Goodwill. They are given to many other agencies to actually do what the government used to do. So you're answering to more and more and more people who have something to gain from the legislation that is truly not representative of the population at large. So what do you and I have to say about these particular battles in which we are engaged? People are worried about Obamacare when what we really needed, number one, was to shrink the power of the HMOs. We used to have low-cost county hospitals that would take care of the needs of the uncovered. They did it very successfully. We talk against Canada's healthcare system. 67% of all Canadians are happy with their system. They come to the United States if they can't get major surgery within a short length of time. But how do we answer the 86 million Americans who are on food stamps and almost 60 million who are without health care coverage of any kind, and others who are simply bankrupt because of the fact they've had an illness not covered by an insurance company? I'd like to ask the question to you people who think that single-payer systems are so terrible, and ask the question, how's that working for the richest economy for the United States population? The answer, only for those who can afford such a system. So, can government grow smaller? Not necessarily, but it can grow to be more responsible and responsive to the citizenry who votes them into power. Is it likely under this particular system that much will ever change short of a constitutional referendum and sanctions being given to Congress and the politicians clear up into the White House that the people are serving them notice? That if you do not do the people's bidding, which they haven't for many, many decades, then therefore you will have to answer to the government of the United States, which is the people. That's what we used to teach in civics class. Now there's very little discussion done about such a concept. So what do we do from here? You start with campaign finance reform. You demand that Congress grow a little intestinal fortitude and teach them that it's their job to look after the Federal Reserve System of our money supply and to try to go back to a better monetarization of our currency that does not just fund the corporate elitism that is ruining the sovereignty of the United States. No, Christianity is not about America. And it is not an American invention. But it is time for the churches to stop supporting an anti-Christian system that will be the ruining of the traditional church as we have known it. If we do not understand, we need a government that supports the wellness of American society. Let's send them a message they will indeed understand. Will government grow smaller? Not by its nature, but let's make it be more responsive. Father Tom Roberts saying thanks for listening.